Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. Today, I'll be interviewing Beth Sandlin. Now, Beth is known to be the founder of a Trifecta Pilates. She offers a range of online Pilates classes through YouTube and the Trifecta Pilates app. So it makes it a lot easier for you to get comfortable in your own home to do the Pilates classes, which I think is amazing these days. And she emphasizes on the importance of moving with alignment with the nervous system. Her expertise has extended into professional education with the trauma-informed Pilates approach. And through her work, Beth invites everyone to explore the transformative power of movement and discover a path to wellness that resonates with your mind, body, and spirit. Having said that, welcome, Beth. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here today to have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the thing is, a lot of people are thinking, well, what's Grace? Where are you going with this? What's Pilates got to do with, dealing with cancer? Now, I will mention that again off record. I did say to Beth, I want to acknowledge you because anyone who has gone through any type of cancer needs to be acknowledged. So I really take my hat off and say, hey, this is what it's like to be on the other end. So this is why it's important to for me to bring that up, because a lot of people are thinking, well, why are you bringing up Pilates, Grace? Well, that was one thing that was offered to me. It was mentioned to me going through breast cancer. Grace, you should start, using Pilates. So if you want to sort of a little bit touch on the type of cancer you had, but how that now transferred to years later or whenever you started doing Pilates and why it's extremely important, like you said, to transform. It's not just physically the process of the trauma of the treatments of cancer, but it's also, working with the body and healing yourself moving forward. So take us on that journey.
Yes, well, I had acute myeloid leukemia. I was diagnosed at the age of 20. The diagnosis for AML is quite quick typically. And so basically I had a bone marrow biopsy, immediately went into the hospital, was transferred within 2 days and started treatment within less than 5 days. So really quick, was inpatient for approximately 3 months with some breaks in between. So I could go for another round and then continued treatment for another 2 to 3 years with oral forms of chemotherapy and other complementary medications as well. And before I was diagnosed, I started having a consistent workout program. My family, when I was diagnosed with cancer, they said, how are you the one diagnosed with cancer? You are the healthiest person out of any of us. You've shifted your eating patterns, you work out now. And it goes back to the mindset that I wasn't shifting just for physical benefits, but it actually made me stronger to deal with all the treatments and also the emotional element that comes up when inevitably we are diagnosed with cancer, when someone is. And so it did make me stronger to go through the treatment therapies. And how the treatment therapies are for the different types of cancer are so different, and how we all respond, even if we were to receive the very same treatment, is so has a variety to it. In fact, I was receiving my treatment for AML at the same time a friend of my younger sister's was, her mom was. We started off on the same treatment path, and our paths slowly started separating based upon how we were responding, and us telling our medical providers, the doctors, how we were reacting, sometimes rashes or infections, like all these things that can happen. And so we started going on much different paths, even though we had the same initial diagnosis. After I experienced cancer and was fully in remission, any cancer survivor knows that it actually takes a lot more than just, you're in remission to get back that full health and vitality. And at the time, and I think it's still happening, unfortunately, is there wasn't a lot of support to, well, how do I get back there? I don't really need that invasive treatment anymore, but I can't do a push-up like I was able to do before. When I was holding my nephew, I started like shaking and sweating. My older sister looked at me and said, "Do you need me to take him back?" And it was very challenging. I did, because I did not have the physical strength to hold a 1-year-old. And that was a big sign. Okay, I want to get back to feeling well. And this was, again, I was 20 years old, so really young. And that's what motivated me to start going back to the gym. But I started very small and short. And depending upon the treatments I was still undergoing, sometimes I could do my workouts a little bit more challenging. And other times I really had to scale back because I just didn't have the energy, the same energy. It was really fluctuating based upon what else was going on. About a year and a half, I would say, after I was in remission, I walked into a Pilates class and I immediately enjoyed it, stuck with it, and a little while later became or went through the teacher training process to be a Pilates teacher. And not only have I experienced great benefits from Pilates, but worked with a lot of other people who have as well. Many of them, like you and a lot of your listeners, who are breast cancer survivors and going in a different sense through the cancer journey now, not from a personal perspective, but from the clients who I know, experiencing their diagnosis, the fluctuations in their Pilates during, and then how they're able to recover with continuing moving their body.
That's just amazing how you said that, because it's so funny, because I'll take you sort of like a little bit back, because it's true what you said, because there's not enough support. And we speak about this a lot. It's basically, oh, okay, hey, we've done your scans, we've done your test, you're now in remission, see you later, have a great life. And it's like, well, now what? And whether it's the mind, the body, the spirit, everyone's coming home with this bag of, like, it's not even a gift bag. It's like you've unpacked a locker, because you've had this, you were storing all your stuff in this locker while you're going through your treatment. And then all of a sudden you come back out and you're like, well, now what do I do with all this stuff? What stuff do I need? What stuff don't I need? And how do I know the difference? And like you said, it's really, really important, especially someone who's gone through chemo, especially someone who's gone through radiation, anyone or who's taken the tablets, whether it's like the intravene of the chemo or the tablets. Your body is depleted and you need to start building that back up. It's like your body was left so depleted. And I look at it on a psychological level, because that's what makes you stronger, because that's the biggest test, is when you're completely on your knees. That's when you stand up, because no matter, like Rocky, no matter how many times life beats you down. It's so true, isn't it? Because we do that. So it was really important. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, I was writing down a few things too, because, one thing, it was crazy, like you said, I got to mention this, because when you started talking about Pilates, I started doing Pilates prior to getting diagnosed. And after I got diagnosed, I stopped, which was silly, because now I understand, you know what I mean? Back then I was like, oh, I'm doing Pilates, and it wasn't until you sort of brought it to my attention. So I thank you for that, because it really brought that to my attention. But like you said, you are now starting to go through things like Pilates, but what exactly is it? I mean, you were doing workouts before. Like you said, you probably didn't have the strength going back into the gym like you used to, but now you're going back in. What makes you change? Or you walked into a Pilates class because obviously you were doing something else prior. What made you change that? What made you change and go into the classes of Pilates more?
Well, I've always been open to just trying something new. As an example, right now, I'm trying a tap class for the first time since I was 10 years old. So sometimes I feel like as adults, we just stop trying new things and we stay so like, I don't do that. I'm not flexible, so I can't do yoga. Oh, I'm not strong enough, so I can't do Pilates. When that's like the very skills that we would learn in that, or like, I can't remember how to shuffle and flap, and so I'm not going to go to tap. Well, that's why I'm going to tap class. So I just like to explore. And so I simply wanted to explore how Pilates was. And what I really appreciated about it was the blend between not only working out, but learning more about our bodies and really emphasizing what is that range of motion that's going to be beneficial? It's not exactly what the teacher is doing. It may be a little bit different. And that, especially for breast cancer survivors, is really important for people who have had any type of surgery because of breast cancer. Maybe they've worked with a physical therapist, but even with that, after maybe they've completed their physical therapy, it could be really helpful to still move of course it's going to be helpful to still move the body, but continue moving and exploring what is that line where it's still beneficial. And what I've noticed is sometimes, because we can't do things now or in the past, that gets stuck in our mind, right? I can't do that. I can't do that. And so when I went back into the gym and I went down to do a push-up and I stayed down, I could not push back up. Rather than thinking I can't do a push-up, it was a flip to what can I do? Okay, I can do a wall push-up. That's what I can do right now. It's still a push-up. And eventually, brought that push-up lower and lower until it was a regular push-up again. So I really emphasize people to focus on what can you do that's a positive movement experience. And sometimes resting and simply taking deep breathing is going to be the most beneficial. Other times it's maybe going to be a wall push-up.
Absolutely. Because I was just going to say that I forgot to ask you though what type of Pilates you're doing, whether it's with the machine or whether it's without. Because my neighbor next door, she does Pilates, but I'm not using the right terms, and I apologize. But she uses the one without the machine. So which one are you doing?
So I am a comprehensive Pilates teacher, which means I can teach and move on the reformer and the Cadillac and the window chair, all these amazing pieces of equipment. And for the last over 7 years, since 2012, I have been exclusively teaching and moving with Pilates mat. And I found it to be just more convenient, more beneficial for a home practice, and especially for people who are getting back into working out, whether it's because they haven't worked out in a long time, or they're getting back into a consistent workout routine because they have had to take some time off because of cancer. Because you can fit it in at home. It can also complement if they are seeing a physical therapist or going to a Pilates studio. I work with many people who go to a Pilates studio, but they aren't going there every single day. And so on days that they're not doing the full length class, they'll supplement with something shorter, sometimes a morning routine, sometimes maybe an afternoon pick-me-up. There's a lot of options when it comes to mat Pilates, especially once we get more fun with it and we start including like a simple resistance band or a strap or a ball. So there's a lot of variety we can have, whether someone wants to move on the larger pieces of equipment or keep it on the mat.
The thing is, that's so true. Like you're saying, it's in small steps, because if we talk of someone who's had breast cancer, like myself, when you get an operation, the doctors are pretty much, patting you around. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. So what happens is, it's like anything, isn't it? If you break your leg, I remember having I've got an ACL operation done by one of the best surgeons in Melbourne. And I remember he comes in the next day and he's like, "Yep, you're good. Your knee's good." And I'm like, "Are you crazy? Don't touch my knee. It's broken." But what I'm trying to say is, what happens is your mind end up putting a really big bubble wrap around it even more. And you think, "Oh no, I'm afraid, because what if, what if, what if?" So how would someone specifically with breast cancer, like you're saying, okay, come and do Pilates. What is some of the things, if you don't mind discussing, of what they could start with physically?
My number one recommendation, and this is for anyone, especially people who have experienced breast cancer treatment, see a physical therapist at least once. They have a lot of very specific training. If you can work with someone who has even more specialty training in breast cancer, amazing, because those very same exercises or stretches or the range of motion that you're in is very helpful to take into Pilates classes, general workouts. So a lot of times people say that a lot of Pilates felt just like physical therapy. Well, movement is movement at the end of the day. But also recommend that they start one-on-one at first if they can. Again, at least for a session or two, because they can get that more personalized advice. If someone, maybe it's not within their means right now, start with the slower Pilates classes. Don't go immediately to a workout. Go slower classes where you have time. What is the range of motion that is optimal? And there's that edge, right, where you're kind of not sure. And so this is my recommendation. Always err on the side of caution at first, so the movement stays positive. And then if you're feeling good during and after, well, next time you can go maybe just a little bit more. I'm not saying like you're going to turn up the radio dial from a 2 volume to a 10. It's like 2 to like 2.5, just a teeny tiny bit more. Those incremental changes is the very way in which you were thinking or saying about how like our mind starts thinking this isn't safe, I'm going to protect and guard, that now our body and mind start communicating, okay, I'm going to listen. Where is that edge? Where is that edge? And it's that slow, gradual progress that's so valuable. But here's another thing about the mind. We also remember what we used to be able to do. Like, I used to be able to do that push-up. I used to be able to do that. Why can't I do it now? And there's no in between. So find that in between, dial it back, and then just slowly build that strength up. And not only strength, but the mobility and the stretch and the ease and freedom. I remember when I was in the hospital, I got a really bad infection in my shoulder. And what I started doing was gripping and guarding. And it was the first time I really recognized, ooh, in one area hurts. Like when I go to sit up, that really hurts. Like you don't think about your shoulder trying to get up out of bed. But let me tell you, that shoulder is working. And so the nurse came in one night. I was sitting here like just with my shoulder stiff. And she goes, are you moving your shoulder at all? I said, no, it hurts too much. And again, I want you to think about, listen to your nurses. They have a gem of information, just like doctors do. She goes, you need to start slowly moving it. If you don't, you're going to just end up stuck in that position. Then you're going to need to have like intensive physical therapy. So gently start moving it. And that's really what helped me with that. And what's helped so many people I worked with as well get from where they are back to full health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with what you're saying, because it's so true that, like we're saying, it's guarded because, as a someone who's gone through breast cancer, depending on the surgery, they have all these pillows under their armpits and that. And like you said, you're told not to put your arm over your head and all of. So you don't put your arm over your head for a long time. Even if you haven't done exercises and you move your arms, trust me, if someone said to you, you're going to start doing overhead stretches or something, it's still going to be, hurtful. But like you said, you're not going to go out at 10,000, percent. You're going to go slowly. And that's really important, because this is what I want to touch on next, because I think it's really, really important, because now you're trying to fix the body, but all of a sudden your mind is still going somewhere else. So how do you start bringing them in? How do you start aligning where your mind trusts your body and vice versa? Do you know what I mean? Because your mind is going, run, go back to bed and put that pillow there. And your body's like, no, we could do this. And your mind's like, no, we can't. So how do you align that? Because I think it's really important to start working, like you said, with the mind.
Number one, it's, do you have the medical clearance? And if you ever question, like, are you sure? Do I still have to be resting? Or are you sure I'm able to do that? Talk to your medical provider. Like, ask follow-up questions. This was something I was so blessed with, that my doctor was very good at, if we had any questions, he would say it in a different way or explain it more nuanced, not only for me, but for my family as well. And that was really helpful. So get that medical clearance, number one. And that working with someone one-on-one, again, it could just be for a little bit, may need to be a little bit longer, is really helpful, because they're going to help you navigate that edge and, give you the reasons why maybe going to that just end range may feel a little bit like, I'm not sure if that's okay, but why it is helpful. Because especially if someone's just integrating back to more open arms or overhead, it is not only going to have a different movement experience than prior, because we haven't been doing that motion in a long time, but also because of the treatment, the surgical process that they were going through. So there's a whole bunch of other considerations to think about. And this is what I just tell myself sometimes that may be helpful for people who are listening. I promise to push my body when it's appropriate and to listen to it and ease off when it's not. Because it's not just the stretches and mobility and slow work. We do want to get back to more vigorous. It's very helpful for our physical stamina. It's actually really helpful for emotional health and mental well-being as well, we know now. And so that line for everyone is gonna be a little bit different. And I really just suggest just keep going in with that, starting those slow incremental changes. And of course, if you can, work with someone personally at first, and then transition to feeling like you can do this on your own. Because here's the thing that I talk about a lot is what we do in Pilates is really just to help us for our everyday life. You know, when we're thinking about lifting the arm up overhead, well, think about a can of soup high up in the shelf. That's the arm lifting that we hopefully want. Now, sometimes, right, we may need to bring that can of soup down so that we can reach it or get a step stool. But what the body's really good at doing is finding the path of least resistance. And in doing so, sometimes it's not the most optimal path. So if our shoulder's tight, which is really common, and we start arching our back to get the arm up higher, guess what? Our back is going to start feeling not so great. But if we have awareness of actually, I do want to get that range of motion all the way back so I can reach that can of soup high up and keep the rest of the body still, it's going to take us so much further. So just, I would say, slow it down, give yourself time, and give yourself time to start understanding your body a little bit more. This is something, you know, back in the day when I first started working out, before I started Pilates, wasn't really talked about. It was just follow exactly what the teacher is saying, the group fitness teacher, the step teacher, whatever they're teaching, and you'll be fine. What we know now is that customization and personalization, even, you know, hands on the wall for support, doing a squat so you stay more balanced and your hips can stay more in alignment, could be a good bridge to eventually not using the hands.
Yeah, and I agree with that because it was really, it's interesting how you say, because you know, even when you were saying like you stretch, you don't realize that, yeah, you're substituting your arm with your back, and then your back's out of whack because you're not using what your body's supposed to do. You're bringing in everything else to sort of like support it because you don't actually have the strength. So it's I guess it's like you're just, you know, I guess if you, like you said, if you're trying to lift yourself up, you will end up using parts of the body to actually help you, but you shouldn't have to do that. You should just use the parts of the body that allows you to stand up, you know, because of the strength that's involved, which is really important. Now, you mentioned here something about, which was really interesting, about relieving stress and promote calmness to the nervous system. Again, this is something that I think is important because you've gone through the journey, or you're going through. Just let me ask you this question: have you had anyone who's going through the treatment come and do bits of Pilates, or is it mainly after the treatments and after the go ahead from the doctor?
Wonderful question. When I was working in person, it was mainly after, and that's because the structure of in-person classes are typically an hour in length. Sometimes you might be able to get a half an hour. Honestly, that's going to be too much, that longer length session. I have people within the membership and app, however, who have been going through different types of cancer who continue moving with Pilates. I want to have a big extra asterisk around this, though. They are not doing those very challenging, very long workouts. It's something slower. Sometimes it may be something more strengthening. They have that medical clearance as well. They really understand what they need, and they adjust based upon a lot of the nuances that inevitably come up when we're going through cancer treatment or preparation or post-surgery. So there's a few different considerations. And that's one of the reasons why I love offering Pilates from my home to other people's, because it can be a short 10-minute session that's focusing just on gentle movements or deep breathing, something stretching for the lower body rather than just for the upper body. And the number one thing that people say is it still gives them the autonomy to move, something that they have enjoyed, and they feel like they can still do something. And it's not that they're moving every day or even every week sometimes, but they have a lot of options that they can refer to.
Yeah, and it's really important to move, because even my surgeon, regardless whether it was before, after, in between, even now, 6 years later, the first thing, I guarantee you, the first thing she says is, "Are you moving? Are you moving, Grace?" Now, I'm not a small girl, but it's not. I'm not like obesely overweight, but I'm not small either. She's not worried about my weight. She's worried about my movement. So she will always say, "Have you been moving?" I could go and see her now, because I mean, obviously, I'm cancer free. You still got to do your checkups, like I see her every 6 months, and the first thing, it's religiously, and my husband comes in with me because he's a gym junkie. So he comes in to make sure I'm not lying and going, "Of course, I'm going in the gym 24/7." But the first thing she says religiously, "Grace, are you moving?" And I think she's always promoted that, because it's important to keep moving. Now, it's not just the body, like we're saying, it's not the physical side, it's also the psychological side. Because once you start doing things that are improving the body, it changes the way you think about yourself. So touch on that, because you say about calmness and stress, and people who have going through this or have gone through any sort of trauma or anything in their life. It's really important for them to get that mind to be so less like calm. So touch on that. How do you believe that Pilates has helped with people being more calm and less stressed?
For a lot of people who have not experienced cancer, the point in time, which was, I'm going to say, great awakening for the power of movement, and in this particular case, Pilates, that the benefits extend beyond the physical, was actually the pandemic. It was the first time that I feel a lot of people actually had a more similar experience to what we have gone through as cancer survivors. And that is major life disruption, pause everything, your life looks completely different. And this is a side note here. It's one of the reasons why for me, the pandemic was like, I got this. Like, I've already had this major life disruption in the past. Like, I get to be home with my family and don't have to be in the hospital and like alone and like worried about the cancer treatments and the side effects. So back to how it helps is that for a lot of people, they started recognizing that they had that consistent Pilates practice because after the class, they just felt calmer, their mind more clear. They didn't have to think about everything else that was going on during their time. And it was a way that they actually maintained a more consistent practice. It felt more relevant and important than ever before. And the same is true when we have experienced cancer, even for those people who maybe are listening to the podcast and they haven't personally experienced cancer, but a loved one has. Let's acknowledge that that's a whole different perspective of navigating the cancer journey and has its own stressors that go along with it. That it's day in and is this okay to eat? How am I feeling? How am I reacting to the medication? Is this rash like a rash that I need to tell my doctor? Is it not? What about these bruises? There's so many things. Our mind keeps going. And taking a time to move our body where that can just quiet a little bit, and we can then focus on gentle movement, not maybe pushing, or maybe it is something a little bit more vigorous, depending where people are that day. That is so very powerful. And what we found is that movement everywhere from running all the way to meditation. So that's a big spectrum. One is very vigorous. One is we're going to sit and breathe. That it has benefits for helps reduce anxiety and depression. And what I love about the research that we're starting to uncover now is that it doesn't just have to be meditation, because not everyone resonates with that. That's not going to be suitable for everyone. And so moving the body with Pilates, a more vigorous workout or something a little bit more soothing, can be a really powerful practice for calming the nervous system, calming the mind. And the only way people know this, and I was just talking about this today, was putting it into action. Like, we can know the theory, but we just have to give it a try. And what classes do we resonate with more? Is it something a little bit more vigorous? Is it maybe standing workout or down on the mat? something that's going to be slower, and just I would encourage people, just keep experimenting. And if you find a class or even a teacher who you don't resonate with, give another one a try. There's someone who I know who tried, I think, 5 different Pilates studios before she landed on the one where it really felt like, yeah, this is my space. And imagine if she just was a one and done. Well, that wouldn't have benefited her. So again, just I would encourage people, try and try something different. Try again, revisit it. Because one other aspect is, just like with cancer, there's a learning curve with Pilates. You know, when we're first diagnosed, we're learning all this new terminology with cancer, and it seems so foreign. And then, you know, a month in, sometimes less than that, the lingo just rolls off of our tongue. The same with Pilates. Some is similar, like we may have heard of it before, but there's a learning curve with how to listen to our body and move and maybe refine and adjust for different experiences that we're going through. So giving ourselves time to go through that learning curve is very helpful.
Wow, I love the way you just said that. Just that bit, I think, is just the ribbon of this whole conversation. Is like you said, you know, you at the beginning, it's overwhelming. You have no idea what the doctors are talking about, and if you can get that hands down and the lingo hands down, like anything else, it's the same way. I just want to quickly go back because I think in my hallucination, I think when the pandemic hit, they should have just got all us people, not just women, but people who went through cancer, because I kid you not, you're in Colorado, I'm in Australia, or you're in the States, I'm in Australia, and I'm thinking the same thing. I thought the exact same thing. I would say to people, look at the pandemic like a cancer diagnosis. You're lucky it's not, but look at it. Start changing the way you're doing things. Start detoxing your surroundings, your community, your home, and start doing things you've always wanted to do. I think it was really important. And honestly, I think they should just put a bunch of us together and said, hey, this is what it is, because it's exactly what I said. But I quite like the way you said that. Also, that's what I speak to women who I mentor, is wellness. Wellness is anything from running to meditation, but try. That doesn't work, it's okay. Try this. If that doesn't work, try this. Because the thing is, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to tell you about your treatments. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yes, do this, don't do that. When it comes to the medical side, I will give you the information and you do it. But when it comes to the wellness, I will put 101 things in front of you and tell you, you've got to try this. You've got to try it. Like you said, keep trying. If it's like Pilates, I love Pilates. When my neighbor tried to do the one without the machine, don't like it. Why? That's a personal choice, but I love the other ones and I really want to go back. So I think you're a message. You were sent here on a message, honestly. I believe that. Because I've been wanting to go back and do Pilates, because for me it was something that I'm not a gym junkie. I'm not someone who goes into a gym and does workouts like that. I don't like it. But Pilates was always something I went back to. I would stop, I'd go back to Pilates all the time because I felt it, like you're saying. I felt it. Not only was it strengthening my body, but it was strengthening my mind. And I would walk out of there. Yes, I would walk out of there laughing because I can't do half the stuff everyone else can. But it's not about that, right? You know, where there was poles, Grace has got 4 of them trying to hold her up. But I was laughing because, and that I thought was changing the way I thought about myself. You know, from we judge ourselves. Instead, I was laughing at myself. I was having a really good time with me. It wasn't about competing with someone else. And going back to you now, because I will touch on your app and everything, but that is really important too, because once the pandemic stopped, it's like, well, now what? I'm at home. But at the same time, we had what we call a blessing. We had the internet where you can connect with everyone around the world. So that was right there, you know, but you needed to not just watch someone, you needed to keep doing things. And I remember watching a video of a cyclist cycling in his house because he wasn't allowed out. But he didn't care. He was cycling from the inside of his, he was in a, well, when I say a house, it was actually an apartment. And he was cycling inside through the balcony back out, and he was just doing that, whatever it took to move the body. So about your app. So yeah, I know you're on YouTube, so you can touch on that, but also the Trifecta Pilates app. Talk about that. Give us some information about that.
I would be happy to do that. I started off on YouTube as a way to bring Pilates to more people. I say for people who are like, want to get to know me a little bit better, try out some classes. It's a great place to begin. And if you're loving them, the app is 100% the next logical step. And that's just because there's more class options, from very short classes to longer length classes. More restorative to sessions that are more workout based. And so we have a lot of support embedded into the app as well. Not only workouts, but for people who are like, how do you do the 100 or teaser exercise? These are more traditional Pilates names that you'll get to know of exercises as you move with Pilates. We have exercise reviews of them. So if you can't do that full expression with the legs straight, that's not suitable. Well, here are some go-to options. And I really like to focus on what are those options you can do rather than I can't do that full option, because there was a time for myself as well. Remember, not only could I not do a push-up at one point in my life, I had a major surgery in which I couldn't do Pilates for many months. I came back, I couldn't even be on my hands and knees. Like, that was too taxing for me. I was shaking and sweating. 3 breaths, that's it. And so I know from personal experience, and also from so many people who I've worked with, that we want to find that option that's just right. It's kind of like the Goldilocks option, I call it. Not too much, not too little. What is that perfect option? And then we may adjust that moving forward. So another nice thing about the app is you can download the classes, take them on vacation with you, especially if maybe you want something a little bit more restorative on vacation. You can create playlists. There's so many great benefits of the app.
So let me ask you this, because you've created it. So was this an app you thought about for years, or did it come about like, oh, you know what, I might as well start doing this as an app? How did that sort of come about? Because the thing is, you need to know what you're talking about. You can't I just can't be a Pilates instructor by doing Pilates 7 times or 20 times. It doesn't make me an expert. So what made you think, well, you know what, now I want to put out an app?
Well, originally so go back a little ways. I was working full-time at a university here, and I was assistant director of educational services. I was doing Pilates a little bit during that point in my career, and realized I wanted to circle more fully back to Pilates, but in a non-traditional way. Because what I recognized is that I didn't start Pilates in a Pilates studio. I actually started with university classes. And as soon as I had children, the primary place where I was moving with Pilates was at home, even when I was working in the Pilates studio, because it just made more sense to fit it into my life. Sometimes during nap time, other times before they woke up or after they woke up, where there's plenty of times they'd like pull out all of my equipment, my resistance bands and balls, and do an obstacle course while I'm working out. I mean, it was just make it work. And so I realized I want to bring Pilates to people's homes, because that's where I have been able to do Pilates, especially once I had kids and got a full-time job. Like, that combo was, I'm not traveling somewhere else for a long length workout. I'm going to go home and do sometimes a 20-minute workout. So I started on YouTube, but people started asking for more resources, different types of classes. There is the whole like YouTube algorithm that I contend with as well as a YouTube creator. And so there was this point where it's, okay, enough people are asking that having an experience for them beyond YouTube would be helpful. It started out as a website portal. There's still the website portal option. And eventually we recognized from member feedback is people would love to download classes and be able to stream them to their TV. And that's where the app development came. So there's some people who love the website portal and they log onto it with that. Other people are more of those app users. And I have people who kind of go back and forth depending upon the day.
That's so good. You know, that's the thing too. Like you said, you were creating the classes based on a personal um experience, I guess, because like you said, you're doing you okay, this is how you can do it from home because I did it when I was raising my children. I did it from home and you can do it. So the people these days, you know, when they go to an app or a YouTube or wherever, they're not looking at, oh, this person can do it but I can't. They look at, well, if she could do it or he could do it, then I can, because they're using simple, when I say simple terms, they're using things around the house. Oh yeah, I've got that. You know, I don't need to go out and buy a $5,000 Pilates machine, you know, or whatever they cost. So, so what you're doing is you're bringing that. I feel that you're bringing that transparency through because you're saying, well, I could do it, and this is what I've got, you could do it as well. So, but how do you find that you've got to compete in the market now? Because, you know, like you said, you Google the word Pilates now, and a lot of these, I think a lot of these, like yoga, like Pilates, like a lot of these really, you know, beautiful, well, I don't want to just call them exercises because it's more than just an exercise. They get what I call bastardized, where it's just now everyone can do it. I can just, hey, I did 3 classes. I'm an expert, you know, and things like that. How do you find that you're competing in the market? How do you try and push yourself out there to say, well, hang on a minute, you know, I really have done the work and I really know what you need. So how do you compete with all those, what I call wannabes?
Well, I'll bring it back to, you said just recently and earlier, like, just because I've taken Pilates like 3 to 10 times doesn't mean I can teach Pilates. Unfortunately, that's very prevalent on YouTube and on Instagram, and it's really scary. There's a lot of things that quite honestly aren't Pilates. There's training programs that people unfortunately can do in a weekend rather than something that's really in depth so that they can learn the variations. And I just am there for people when they're ready, and usually the algorithm will work in my favor. Many times what happens is people who connect with me tend to have tried Pilates elsewhere, whether in person or online. And sometimes it's, oh my gosh, like moving with you at home, it just feels like I'm in the Pilates studio. And that's only because of my experience as a comprehensive teacher. And we're using like a wall sometimes, or chair, or like the mat, or even a blanket at home in different ways, because I'm starting to replicate some of the exercises traditionally done on the larger pieces of equipment, which is really fun to do at home and incredibly beneficial. And then we just think about the other people who say, oh, now I realize I wasn't really doing Pilates like with that other channel. Now there's a lot of amazing, well-trained Pilates teachers now on YouTube. When I started, my number one reason why is because people were asking me, Beth, we're going on break for our university classes here for Pilates, and I want to keep moving with it. Can you post on YouTube? And I thought, no, I'm just going to go find some recommendations. And I couldn't find recommendations for what I felt was really true to the Pilates method. Whereas if I searched in yoga, it felt like I could find options that were more true to yoga. And of course, there's, you know, outliers. So I would suggest for someone just getting into this, well, one, try moving with me and focus. Notice how the teacher is teaching. So if you move with a video, for instance, that has just a timer and there's no additional guidance, if you don't know Pilates, it's not going to help you refine how you move the body. Like, what do you do when your neck is bothering you and you're doing an ab exercise? Should those legs be squeezing together more to support you with different exercises? And one thing when we think about that in-person experience is that we will tailor the session for the person in front of us or the group in front of us. So sometimes we'll slow down the class, other times we'll speed it up. In a video format, it's more on the person pressing play and moving with that workout. And so sometimes a faster flowing class, I wouldn't teach to someone brand new to Pilates, but it's available in the membership. It's available on YouTube, because I have people, honestly, who have been moving with Pilates longer than I have, and I've been moving with it. Well, I've been teaching over 20 years, moving with it longer. And so there needs to be those workouts for those people who are ready for it. And when someone reaches that level, and at the same time, I would suggest start with a foundations program, Pilates for beginners, another series, and we have all of those in the membership, so people feel like they can really establish that strong base and connection rather than just following along to the most challenging workout.
Yeah, because you got to start slowly. Like you said, there's no point looking at a Pilates class and the person is twisted into a pretzel or a whatever you call it. So, you know, it's not going to help. But see, someone like I was just sort of looking at someone like myself who, you know, I look after women, like I mentor women. And as I said before, I bring out all these wellness programs to them. I put them in front of them so then they could choose, you know, and I say, well, what about this? What about that? How do you make your app personal? Because say, for example, I have a woman who's just finished her treatments and she's, Grace, I've got no energy. I've now, because it's not just here in Australia, it's everywhere in the world. What happens is you get that time off to heal, but the moment you finish healing, everyone has to go back to work. Everyone goes back to work. Everyone goes back to being a mom. Everyone goes back to being a wife, and they've got no time for themselves. And that's what I say to them, well, you didn't learn. Sorry, disclaimer. You didn't learn. Because cancer's supposed to strip away your old beliefs and put in new beliefs. And you've got to have time for you first. So, but a lot of people go back to that. So how do you come through personally to someone who's like, I can't do this, Beth. I don't have the time. How do you come across them in your in your apps or on your YouTube or in your programs?
In the app, it's easier because if someone has a question, that's why we have live sessions. Even for people who can't attend live, they submit their questions via a form so I can answer them just like we're talking now. I answer them to provide that feedback. It's one of the reasons why I don't focus on just 30-minute workouts or just 60-minute workouts or just something vigorous, why there's variety. And for people who are like, I'm just getting back into work, it's a transition, we have to give it time, but continue to carve out time for yourself. And here are some options. First thing in the morning. I'm not a morning person. That's never going to work for me. Usually never. Midday, my hour-long lunch break, many times I would carve out a portion of that to work out instead, even a walk. After work or before bedtime. So what time makes sense the most? And don't shoot for that hour long. Take it back to start with 10. When I was getting back into working out, and we had moved into this house that I'm in now. I just started a new position, full-time job, so a lot of new. And all of a sudden, it's like, I don't have time to work out. I went through this narrative. I don't have time. I don't have time. So I said, yes, I do. I'm going down in my basement to work out for 10 minutes. I come back upstairs. My husband said, is that all you're working out? Yep. 10 minutes. It could even be 5 minutes. Whatever it is, just carve out that time. What I found for busy women in particular is really helpful is shorter workouts more consistently. Because inevitably what happens if we carve out an hour, not only may we not have the energy for that, but say a business meeting comes up or runs over. So now you don't have your hour to work out and you think, oh my gosh, like I don't have the hour to work out, but I don't have any time carved out for the next day to work out. And it feels like, oh my goodness. So I went into it with this mindset. I'm going to work out every day. And if I take a day or two off, no worries. It's just 10 minutes, or once we go up, maybe 15 minutes, whatever it may be. And no, for my mind, a workout is more than just strenuous. It could be gentle stretching, just movement. So I go back and forth between the language of workout or movement, whatever helps people the most, because we know that not only vigorous workouts are very beneficial for body being, but also slower sessions for balance, for flexibility, for mobility work. As an active recovery day, it helps our body heal from something a little bit more vigorous. And when we tune into what workouts are going to be most motivating for us, that's how we tune into the energetic level that we're at right now. And energy is affected by sleep, by recovery, by nutrition, by stress levels, by a whole bunch of factors. And if you ever hear yourself, give yourself the narrative, I'm not motivated to work out, It's simply your body saying, I don't feel like doing that, whatever that is. It could be, I don't feel like doing that vigorous spin workout. I don't feel like doing that vigorous Pilates workout. And our mind interprets that because of the messages we've heard over the years is, you lack motivation. You just need to push harder. You need to push hard, keep working out because that's the only way, rather than moving with kindness, listening actually to the wisdom of your body, and your body saying, that is going to deplete you, that more challenging class. So how can we shift gears? Just like our car shifts gears, we need to shift that gear down sometimes and do something shorter, more soothing. And another piece I'll add is that I always look at how are you feeling before, during, and after, and all those things should be in alignment. And if after you're feeling the workout depleted your energy, it's simply information that next time you're going to want to maybe turn down that dial of intensity a little bit based upon the variables going on in your life. And we can just keep gathering information. And here's I'll share one more thing. I know I said one. Pilates instructors often lie when it comes to one. When we're teaching workouts, we always want to squeeze one more rep in, one more rep in. That when we think about setting ourselves up for success, it's just taking the time to understand, what do you need, that slow progression, and slowly getting back into it, being open to making adjustments to the information that we're receiving from our body.
That's just amazing how you just put that whole thing together. It really is. It's just really good because you're bringing up really important things about this. Again, we're not telling you to go full force. We're telling you to take slow steps. And how does someone find fun and joy in what they're doing? What's something you could tell them? Like someone's like, oh, I don't know if I can. Oh, I don't know if I could be. I don't know if I could find it funny. Not funny. I mean, I laughed at myself through Pilates. I laugh at myself. So that helps me. I laugh at myself because seriously, it's like when we say fish out of water, mate, it's like a whale out of water. But I laugh at myself and I'm okay because I'm at that point. But how does someone find, joy and fun? What would you tell them if they're trying to get into exercising? Because, like you said, that mind is going, nah, that's too hard. I don't want to do that. I don't want to run. I don't feel like running. It's too hot. It's too cold. I haven't got the right runners, because these are all excuses we make out to ourselves. So what would you say with someone, what advice would you give them to make it more fun for themselves?
Well, fun is the F word. I feel like a lot of adults don't really investigate. Like we just left it all to our youth, and now we're just supposed to be so serious as adults. And I definitely fell into that trap. My dad always encouraged me, like, tried to make jokes. It's something I resonate with more. You can talk to my kids about it. My mom jokes I have and having fun, but I would not be doing Pilates for over 20 years if it wasn't fun. It's not sustainable to be like, I'm just going to push through this workout. I don't like it. And I'm going to keep doing it. That's so many times why people have more of a cyclical workout cycle, because they're thinking about maybe traditional workouts. Like, I just have to run. I just have to go lift those heavy weights right away. I just have to do this. There's a lot of different options for working out. And if you would have told me when I was in middle school that I would have been dedicating my life's work to the practice of movement and Pilates, I would have laughed at you, because in my middle school PE class, I wiggled my way out of every single activity I possibly could because it was so embarrassing. I didn't resonate with being athletic, and it didn't resonate with being good at working out. And there's a whole, mindset with the evaluations that many times are done in PE classes, which aren't really helpful in my opinion. But looking at, what do we enjoy? Do you like walking? Do you like listening to this podcast? Well, put it in your ear and go on a walk. What is it that you like? Do you like top class? Like I mentioned earlier, give it a try and see what resonates with you. Maybe it's Pilates, Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a certain type of Pilates. There's a lot of people who I work with who they're like, I love the flow classes where we're moving from one exercise to another. There's other people like, I don't like that. I like slower classes with like longer transitions between the exercises. And that's why there's options. So we can find what lights you up right now. And here's something is that sometimes what lights you up for enjoyment and having fun, both with workouts and beyond, is not the forever. It could be a month, it could be a week, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. There was a point where I was really inspired and I moved with yoga consistently for a few years. And then I kind of transitioned to, you know what, that's no longer serving me the way it originally was. And I found other things to kind of fill that in. A person I know who enjoys yoga and is actually a yoga teacher and yoga teacher trainer, she said at one point she was really into CrossFit for like a year, and that actually really helped her reclaim her power. But when that no longer served her, she moved on to something else. So it's that being curious with what's going to light you up and bring you joy. And I'm with you. I laugh at myself in my Pilates practice all the time because I don't get it perfect. That's for sure. And that's so much better for our body and our mind to go in with that. You'll learn more from the mistakes. Think about teaching a child how to ride a bike. Do they ride it perfectly the first time? Well, there's maybe like 1% of kids who like they're on it and they just ride. Like those are those little kids in the park we see and they zoom past us and we think, oh my gosh, how are they? They just have it. But most kids, it's like they're on a tricycle first, then a different type of bike, and then maybe with training wheels or one of those where they use their feet instead of the pedals. And they try, and then some people tell you try on the grass. That didn't work for my family. You know, there's different ways in which someone eventually rides a bike, but we try to instill that this is fun. Is it frustrating sometimes for those kiddos to try to learn how to ride a bike? It is. When we sense that, what's that encouragement that we offer them? And so I would encourage us as individuals, what encouragement that we can offer ourselves that would be really helpful as we're exploring different options to move with Pilates or other forms of exercise.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I really do, because, like going back to my surgeon as well, if this is one thing I think I'm going to put on my wellness, sort of my platform that I have for people. I'm going to put definitely Pilates. But the reason I haven't, and I'm being transparent myself, is I don't, okay, well, how can I say this? I should practice what I preach. So I should be going back to doing Pilates. You know what I mean? So if I want someone else to do Pilates, I need to do Pilates. That's how I'm feeling for myself. I'm just being verbally external here. But like I said, I think you came through for not just this podcast. I think you came through for other means. So it scares me, but it's a good scare, because I feel that we get messages in different ways. And this is my message, because it's been something, like I said, that that has been coming up often, and I've kept pushing it in the back, even to the point where my husband's like, you got to come to the gym I go to. They've got Pilates classes upstairs. And I'm like, that's a great idea, because while he's doing his stuff downstairs, I could be doing my Pilates upstairs, and then we can come home together. But again, it's all coming up, but I just keep missing the messages. And then you come up as well. But so I thank you for that. I really do. But so talk about like we were sort of talking before, how do you sort of balance, how does someone balance being a business owner, a mom, and then doing Pilates? Like I think I guess you touched on it a little bit, saying, well, if you've only got 5 minutes, choose that 5 minutes. But how important is it, like being a survivor of cancer, how important is it to look after ourselves first? And why is it important to give ourselves that 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes a day to do something like Pilates?
When I was going through my cancer treatment, I made this silent declaration to myself. If I survive this, I'm going to live my best possible life. And feeling good and having energy for myself. And sometimes, honestly, more importantly, being there for the people I love the most, my family. is the reason why workouts are so important, because we know not only from cancer, but naturally as we get older, if we don't do anything, we are going to lose muscle mass, bone density declines, balance, and there's a whole bunch of complications that come with that that I don't want to experience. So I'm going to do everything in my power while having fun to be here as long as possible and feeling good. And that's my motivation to moving my body in different ways. Challenging classes, something a little bit more restorative. Sometimes it really depends. I'm constantly fluctuating. We talked about seasons before we pressed record. I even fluctuate with the seasons. Like my summer season looks a little bit different than my winter season because we're traveling more. So my workouts get shorter. Typically, I'm not as consistent because we're traveling, and I'm okay with that. I've realized that's a season that I'm in. As far as the balance, so often we think of like Zen balance, eyes closed. This is like everything's perfect. No, I think of like Cirque du Soleil, those tight walk ropers. They are constantly balancing back and forth, and they are like running across that tightrope. And then sometimes they're like standing on each other's shoulders, and then all of a sudden they whip out a bike and they have like a chair, and then someone sitting on it. It's quite complex. That's our reality today. But they learn skills of first walking across that tightrope slowly. I mean, maybe it's just balancing on it first before they walk, but you get it, that they're learning skills, and then they stack and then they layer, and it's constantly adjusting and navigating. And so we can't get so stuck with what worked well for us in the past or even right now, because that most likely is going to change. And I really feel that is the reason why people have a hard time with a consistent workout program, because they feel like it has to be constant. Well, before I had kids or before I had cancer, before I was busy, I was able to do this. And they try to go back to that workout program. Let me tell you, myself, like so many other people I've worked with, we've tried to go back and we can't. We need to focus on the present and what works now, being able to make those adjustments on all the factors that we've touched upon today. And when people do this, I find that they start to understand, oh my gosh, I am starting to work out more now rather than less because the pressure is off. It can be 5, it could be an hour, it can be Pilates, it can be a walk, it can be challenging, it can be restorative, and that is so beneficial for their body. What we know is that pretty much all movement matters when it comes to different types of workout, as long as it's beneficial for our body, and I would say as long as we enjoy it as well. And what the research shows is it doesn't matter about our physical size. We used to really, as you know, from medical perspectives, doctors and messages we hear and still unfortunately hear sometimes, you know, the size of our body determines our health. We know that's 100% not accurate. And that if someone is moving their body, regardless of their size, they have a better lifelong outcome compared to what we many times see as the pillar of health, which I can get into a whole nother conversation, how many times that's very unhealthy, the images that we see, because exercise is that valuable and important. And another thing here to note is that this is something I've been thinking about more. Exercise is one of the only things that we cannot outsource. As an example, we can outsource meals. We can go out to eat if we want. There's like Blue Apron here in the United States anyways, where it's like meals are kind of prepared for you. You just have to cook them. We can do leftovers. There's lots of options. With workouts, we have to continue working out, which is why it goes back to your F word, the fun. How can we enjoy the process? How can we find joy in it and center that? Because it's not, are you doing it one day, 1 week, 1 month, or even 1 year? This is results, and the benefits of it take many, many years. And in one sense, this takes the pressure off, right? Because we don't have to have the perfect plan. It's very cumulative. And so if you have 1 week, 1 month, a stage of your life when you're going through cancer and you can't do the same type of workouts you did before, well, there's the next. There's the next day. There's the next year. There's the next month. What makes sense for you today?
Wow, I like that too, because like you said, though, you know, I just lost my train of thought. It was really, really good. But yeah, I quite like the way you explained that, because Yeah, I lost my train of thought on that, but that's okay. I'll find it in a minute. But I do like the season. I thought, oh, season training. That sounds really, really good because, like you said, not everyone, winter you might be home more. Just, like you go to work, you come home, you don't really go out a lot. Whereas summer, you're probably doing holidays or gatherings or whatever it is. So I quite like that. I actually wrote it down, season training. I thought, hey, that's a great concept if you don't have it already. Um, so look, hey, it's a season, it's training like that. So I thought that was really good. But before, because like I said, I didn't write it down because I'm just writing things down, notes down. But I forgot to write that specific one, and that's okay. But while I'm trying to remember, so the name Trifecta Pilates, what's behind the name? Why did you call your app Trifecta Pilates?
Oh, thank you for asking this question. I knew I did not want it to be Beth Sandlin Pilates because it's not about my Pilates practice. It's about whoever is moving with me, their experience. And what I knew is that from the time that I started Pilates to when I opened Trifecta Pilates, I had a major shift that it's not just physical considerations why we may need to do a different type of exercise or class flow, but it's about not only body, but mind and spirit as well. And trifecta means we need all three. And it's acknowledging that all three need to work together to truly thrive. And I can tell you, I used to be like a lot of other people, that yo-yo like workout person where I was really motivated and then like kind of wean off. I haven't experienced that in years because of the shift in perspective of when I used to tell myself, you lack motivation. Now I just know my body's saying to do something different. What is the wisdom that I've learned? And we've been told so many times not to listen to that wisdom. So it does take some time to get out of that pattern of thinking, I have to do something hard, or I can't listen to doing something a little bit different. And something that could be really helpful for people is, if you were to play a song right now, what would it be? Now, unless you're a one-note music fan and you only like one type of music, most of us like a range of music, like more pop music, maybe like country, something more of a ballad. Sometimes it's you like to turn that volume up a lot. Other times it's a little bit quieter. That if you think about what song and energy would align with that song right now, it could help you pick your workout as well. So if you're like, yeah, I really feel like something like up, well, maybe you want to start something a little bit more vigorous. Or if it's something, I just want to listen to a soothing piece of music that I really like, we'll start with maybe some gentle stretches. And just like we press play on our favorite music, maybe we're like, we don't really feel like this. We can go into a different type of workout if we start one and it's just really not our jam for that day.
I quite like that. I quite like how you said the song, it sort of determines how your mood. Am I in a fun mood? Like I do that. I mean, one thing I learned when after being diagnosed with cancer is I make fun of myself so much. I used to be a fun-loving person, and then I lost it for a while. Like you said, we grow up. Oh, you have to be serious all the time. So I laugh at myself, and I'll find someone dancing on YouTube or on TikTok, and I try and imitate it. And trust me, I laugh so much because I know I look terrible at doing it, but it's because it's part of me that I'm letting go. So why not create the exercise? And that was what I was trying to think before. Thank God we don't outsource exercising, because what else do we have to outsource these days? Everything else is outsourced for us. And exercise is really, really important. But imagine having that mood. Okay, I feel like a soft song. Okay, so I'm going to do my stretches. No, I feel like dancing to something rock. So you end up doing something even more sort of, more profound in your exercising or in your running, like you said, running or whatever it is, or your Pilates. So I quite like that. And yes, your name, Trifecta, absolutely agree. 10,000%, because I always say, if you don't fix this and you don't fix this, it's not going to fix your body. So it needs to work together, because you need to start changing, because our minds, like we know, could be our best friends, but could be our worst enemy, could go against us. And I'm not sure if you think the same, but like you said before, the moment you think, oh, my shoulder hurts, there must be something seriously wrong. No, maybe because you just slept on it, badly. Doesn't necessarily have to be the worst case scenario. My husband always says, you're very selfish, Grace. You want everything, and what he means by that is, okay, my shoulder hurts, it's something there. Okay, the back of my ear hurts, it's got to be something there. My finger hurts, it's got to be something there. And he's like, geez, you want it all. But it's not about that. It's about changing the mind to say, hey, maybe I slept wrong, or maybe when I did go and grab that can of soup, I didn't use a part of my body I should have, and I used something else. And that's the body just saying, hey, it's hurting, fix me, and we can move forward. So I really appreciate everything you said. I really do. And I wanted to ask you if there was something that we didn't touch on that was really important for our viewers and our listeners, or something you want to mention.
I think we covered so much that I hope was really helpful for those of you listening. I would just suggest keep tuning in to what you need today. And sometimes that's working out, and sometimes it's not as well. It's okay to take days off. That's something that maybe we don't talk about enough. I'll go back quickly to seasonally working out. A strategy that I like to use is, we know around the holidays we don't have as much time for working out, and so many times that causes a lot of guilt for people. We can shift that into, okay, our holidays, we know we don't have as much time to work out, and we know that about every 2 to 4 months, it's really helpful for us to intentionally take 1 week off, all the way up to a month off of working out. So could we plan that around our holidays? Or for those of you who are currently undergoing treatment still, you may have started realizing when you have higher energy, when you have lower energy. So maybe that's when you plan your time around, I know I'm going to have lower energy when I'm actively undergoing this specific chemo or radiation. So I'm going to choose my recovery days for that, or my recovery week for that. And that can be really, really helpful, a tool, so that we do stay more consistent. And remember, consistent doesn't mean constant, doesn't mean doing the same thing over and over again. It's being able to make adjustments.
And I think it's, like you said, really important to understand the difference between when to push yourself and when to pull back. I think it's, like you said, a lot of people, I got to do Pilates, but I don't feel up to it. My body's not there. It's not recovering as quick from the chemo or the radiation or whatever the treatment you've gone through. I have a good friend of ours that has been diagnosed with a different cancer again, from breast cancer. And she's a young woman. She's 38, and she was all into like you said, the yoga and everything. And she was a yoga instructor. And then when this happened, like you said before in the beginning, when you said, no, but I did everything right, why did this happen to me? She's thinking the same thing. And I did say to her, you need to start doing things slowly, because in her mind, she believes she has to go in full 110% in her yoga. And I said, no, I'm sure there's yoga for beginners. If I go in, I'm not going to start doing a stretch that someone 20 years has been doing. So I said to her, just do slow things, and it's, I guess, like you're saying, learn when to say it's okay to push forward and when it's not okay. Because also, if you push yourself too much, A, you don't enjoy it, and B, you start hurting yourself. And then you got other issues, because now you got to go and do physiotherapy because you've now hurt yourself because you're not doing it right. So I just wanted to say that for our viewers and our listeners, I think what you have to offer is amazing. And I would highly recommend someone to definitely reach out and do your, like we're saying, it's you're not sitting here saying, Grace, I've got 20 years experience. You need to be an expert at this, and this to join my class. You're saying, hey, I've been there. I've been where you've been, and it's okay. And here are some classes that I've put together for you so you can feel good about yourself. Movement is a form of really expressing the soul as well. So I really, really encourage those watching and listening to definitely reach out. And having said that, where can people reach you, Beth?
You can find me, of course, on YouTube at Trifecta Pilates, or check out all that I have to offer at trifectapilates.com.
Beautiful. I'll make sure I have all the links below on our podcast. So was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap this up?
I just encourage people to ask questions of their medical team. Keep asking questions. I've seen a lot of people in Facebook groups like, oh, I don't know if this bruise is okay, or this rash. Don't ask a Facebook group. Ask your provider. That's what they're there for. And get that medical clearance. If you don't have it yet, that's okay. Again, focus on what you can do. Maybe it's breathing. Maybe you aren't cleared to exercise, but they're suggesting you go on a walk. Remember, walking is a form of exercise. So shift that to what you can do, and also just take time to acknowledge where you are. We're not always going to be in a positive, like Pollyanna mindset. I have definitely been there, but I also know sometimes we need to go through that experience because it's part of our path. It's part of our journey, and it's not going to be that way always. It can shift and change. So tune in to your wisdom, and I hope that you can join me on the mat for a Pilates class.
Absolutely. I actually wrote the word wisdom here because I thought it's really powerful. I think coming out from the other side, it's the wisdom that we get. And this is what we're doing. We're sharing it with others. I always say that what we learn isn't meant to be kept for ourselves, but to be shared with others, because we've been there, done that in specific ways. But I thank you also for bringing the attention of, yes, go to your medical team. I always say to people, it doesn't matter if you decide to go Western or whether you decide to go holistic, but if you decide to go holistic, make sure you have your Western there. Get the tests, get the okays, get the go-aheads. Like you said, if there's something that's coming up through your body's telling you, hey, there's something not right. That's what it's doing. The body's not there to kill you. The body's there to get your attention and say, hey, you've got that bruise. Go get it checked out, because it could be something. It could be part of your treatment that it's not working with your body. It could be anything. But of course, get the all clear before you start doing anything. And I thank you again. I thank you, Beth. This has been amazing. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate what you have inspired all of us, including me, to do going forward. And yeah, I will make sure I have all the links below, and I will be downloading that app as well. So, and I'm not just saying it, I'll be downloading that app going, Beth, I'm starting out. Be slow, be gentle, Beth, be gentle. And so, but no, I appreciate your time. And before I wrap it up, anything else you want to say, or I'll wrap this up for this episode?
I think wrapping it up here is amazing, and I wish you all a beautiful day.
Thank you so much, Beth. And thanks everyone for listening and watching. And like always, I wish you so much love and light.